Friends, calm down now, because I'm struggling to stay calm as well, because it's my favourite time of the week. I am Jack from Cultaholic.com, and it's the time of the week when we look at all of my wrestlers of the week, and then we update the league table and see what's what. I should point out, this has been a particularly strong week from Impact as well, but it's not all Impact. We have some guys from the Indies, we've got WWE involved, we've got New Japan involved, we've got the whole wrestling world coming together to make my personal opinion of who I think's the best and who I think's the worst. So strap yourselves in, and I should mention as well, thank you very much to Adam Pacitti for filling in last week. I should point out those were my, point allocations. I just gave them to Mr. Pacitti, and he delivered them to you while mocking me every sort of 30 seconds or so. So that was cool. I'm all right. Let's take a look at my wrestlers of the week. Honorable mentions: Scott Steiner won a tag belt in Impact at Redemption, the pay-per-view, for the first time in. I think he's over 50. So fair play, Scott. He even hit a Frankensteiner, nearly landed on his heady, but he didn't. He was all right. He flipped out and sort of landed on his front and just stayed down for a little bit, and I was like, oh. But he was okay in the end. Shout out to Moose as well, who did really well in the hardcore match. He took a sick bump out of the ring onto a ladder. That's all of my honourable mentions, so I need something to fill a little bit of time. I'm going to talk about a man named Lil Xan. You know those new rappers that kind of go like, I'm gonna do wrestlers of the week. Hey, I do this in my sleep. Hey, here we go, I'm on a fleek. Yeah, here we go. Hey. And they talk about how much they love painkillers all the time. I can't say that. No, I can't. One of them is called Lil Xan, and I only saw him for the first time yesterday. I saw an image of him, and he looks like your boy, a little bit. He looks, if Sam can just flash up the tweet now, he looks like if all my mother's fears came true. So shouts out to you, Lil Xan, and if we ever meet, we'll have to get one of them selfies, won't we? So I can get some of your followers, because he's got about 300k plus. So I want to cash in on a little bit of that. But anyway, enough about Lil Xan and enough about Scott Steiner. It's time to look at number 10. Number 10, a man from Lucha Underground and a man from Impact Wrestling also. His name is Fenix, or sometimes on the indies, Rey Fenix, but it's Fenix. You know who Fenix is if you're familiar with Lucha Underground. He was like the pure good guy for a lot of Lucha Underground. You had Prince Puma, aka Ricochet, doing all the heroic stuff, but then he slowly became corrupted and slowly turned heel-ish. He became very cocky, whereas Fenix was like the light against sort of the evil characters like Pentagon, Mil Muertes, those sort of guys, Matanza. He was like the hero. If Prince Puma was the Anakin Skywalker of Lucha Underground, then Phoenix was the Obi-Wan Kenobi, I think. Star Wars. Now Phoenix, I should also point out, of course, that there's been some Impact spoilers, but we're only going to take into account things that have happened since the show went to air. So the Impact last night, we're not going to take into account any of the spoilers that have since happened, in case you're familiar with them and think, hang on, Jack, do you not know what's happened? I do know what's happened, I just don't want to spoil it for people who don't. But Phoenix, non-spoilery, on last Sunday's Redemption pay-per-view, was part of a very good main event triple threat match with Austin Aries and Pentagon for the Impact Championship, and he did really well. He was balling out of control. He was really, you can tell when a wrestler is wrestling to impress, and Phoenix certainly was in that match. Unfortunately, he did have a little slip up with the ropes at one point where he went to do a thing to the outside and then slipped off, but he landed on his feet, jumped back in, and just improvised a big spot to the outside, which is always a good sign. There was also, let me consult my notes, because there was another thing he did, but I can't quite remember what it was. Yes, of course, Phoenix was also in the main event of the first televised MLW Major League Wrestling show. And it was a good show. It was a good introduction to MLW for anyone who's unfamiliar with them, aka me. The main event was Phoenix versus Pentagon, and Phoenix again wrestled really well. He's wrestled well, and he's taken part in some important matches this week too. So 1 point for you. Welcome to the list. That was welcome to 1 point. Number 9, Eddie Edwards. Eddie Edwards, former Ring of Honor World Champion and former Impact Champion. Eddie Edwards, one half of the American Wolves, of course, alongside Davey Richards. Eddie Edwards is a fantastic wrestler, as many Ring of Honor graduates, is that the right word? As many Ring of Honor alumni are. He was a big part of their main event scene for a little while, during a bit of a lull in the main event scene, not in terms of match quality, but in terms of star power. So he was kind of the top dog, not by default, but when guys like Kevin Steen and El Generico had already left for WWE. But I don't want to take away from Eddie Edwards' achievements. He's great in the ring, and this week, for the first time in a long time actually, since his Ring of Honor main event run, he demonstrated to me his excellent character work as well. Edwards is currently in a feud with Sami Callihan after Callihan injured his eye with a with a baseball bat shot that was meant to hit a chair but accidentally slipped off the chair and hit him directly in the eye. So they've made that into a storyline. Fair play, good booking from Impact Wrestling. Edwards took part in that 6-man hardcore match at the Redemption pay-per-view, and at the end of the match, because his team lost and it was supposed to be his big revenge angle and didn't come true, he snapped. He taped Sami Callihan to the ring ropes, hit him with a kendo stick a lot of times. Then some referees came into the ring to try and stop him, and he went, "Get off me," just hit them. Then his wife got in the ring and he couldn't tell that it was her. She was behind him. She tried to grab his shoulder. He turned around and went boosh, like kind of a backhand with the handle of the kendo stick, knocked her out, and did the whole great sell job of like, "Oh no, what have I done? I've accidentally hit my wife," and all that sort of stuff. Then this week on Impact, she was in the hospital. Sami Callihan was being really creepy because he was in the same hospital. Who put them in the same hospital? Stupid. And then Eddie Edwards cut a really good promo, rushed to the hospital, beat up Sami Callihan, and I believe got arrested for it. So it's all a bit Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'm really enjoying Eddie Edwards' work at the minute, so I think he's fully deserving of those 2 points. Number 3, let's talk about the 205 Live Gauntlet match. Not as good as the big Gauntlet match we saw on Raw a few weeks ago where Seth Rollins was insane. I think it actually got him my Wrestlers of the Week spot that week. This Gauntlet match wasn't quite as good. It was still very good, but it couldn't quite live up to that big Raw one. But at the same time, there was one clear MVP of the match, and that man's name was Drew Gulak. Drew has been a little bit of a sneaky sausage on the list so far. Wow, I'm just a children's TV presenter, aren't I? I'm just a children's TV presenter. Drew's been a bit of a sneaky sausage in Wrestlers of the Week because he's been picking up points here and there, being very consistent without stealing the show too often, and I think he's really one of the dark horses of this league table. Good on you, Drew. I really enjoy your character work and your professional in-ring wrestling ability. Drew was, as I say, the MVP of the Gauntlet match. He played a variety of roles and he spent the majority of the match in the ring. He was the Rollins of this match. First of all, he played the bullying heel, like defeating a weakened Mustafa Ali, who looked set to go on like a hero run throughout the whole match, but didn't because Drew mercilessly cut him off. Then he had a great match against Tony Nese, his former best friend, and you could tell that Nese was more wrapped up in trying to beat Drew, whereas Drew wanted to win the match. That's a nice way of looking at it. And Drew, used his sneakiness and his craftiness to get one over on Tony Nese, who is, of course, the premier athlete. So Drew had to think a little bit more, guys. Had to think. And then he came up against Kalisto and went back to his sort of classic bullying heel role and was beaten by the heroic Kalisto. I wasn't too happy with this at first before I thought about it. I thought Drew Gulak fully deserves to win this match and become the #1 contender to Cedric Alexander's Cruiserweight Championship. And then I thought, no. Because I don't believe for a second that Cedric's going to lose the belt at the first time of asking. I think that he is guaranteed to win, retain the belt at the Greatest Royal Rumble against Kalisto. So I thought, if Drew Gulak had won, then that's his title shot kind of wasted because they'll keep the belt on Cedric. So I like this because it means that I think Drew is going to be in line for a Cruiserweight Championship reign somewhere down the line. And you know what he's in line for right now? He's going to get around 3 points for Wrestlers of the Week. Bit of an anticlimax, only 3. Sorry, Drew. It's been a good week elsewhere. Next up, a man I didn't really know that much about, and I did a bit of research this week, like I did with guys like Darby Allin and stuff in previous months. I really enjoy learning about new wrestlers, and I enjoy learning about this one, considering that he is my own real-life shoot brother. My younger brother, look at him, clearly. Brody King. Younger. He's my younger brother. Look at that facial hair. Ooh. Brody King, I've learned a few things about him. Number 1, Meltzer says that he reminds him of Brody Lee, aka Luke Harper in WWE. And I can see that from the look of him, and also the fact that he's a bigger guy who's also very athletic as well. I also learned that he took part in a very good match at PWG this past week, a tag match alongside his partner, Tyler Bateman. Not Tyler Bate, Tyler Bateman. I hope they look very similar. They don't. I've had a look. They don't look similar at all, but I wish they did. They were facing off against Ringkampf, and while all 4 guys in the match were really, really good, the crowd came unglued whenever Brody King and Volta stepped into the ring together, and they had some great exchanges as well. They're both very big men, and they can hit very hard indeed. And I really like the fact that emerging from the shadows is kind of an anti-Volta, like a challenge to Volta's dominance of being like the scariest big man in wrestling right now. So Brody King, I'm going to definitely keep an eye on him. Welcome to the list. My bro, he's my brother. Our mum is so proud. She's like, Jack, you're doing all right, doing your wrestling videos. Look at Brody. He's battering a German over in California. Isn't that what we all dream of? No. Next up, Jay White, the former Young Lion over in New Japan, the former I was about to say former New Zealander. He's an honorary citizen of Japan now. No. Oh, he might be. I don't actually... No, he's probably still a New Zealander. Anyway, Jay White, he defended his IWGP United States Championship this week against David Finley. And right, this was a really good match, and you may have expected to see Jay White higher on the list. I got a few tweets saying, you know what, Jay White deserves to be #1. However, I've dropped him down a little bit because in this match for me, while he put in a very good performance, it was a long match, there was a lot of painful looking spots, there was great selling. It's just a little thing that I don't like, and I'm going to seem really nitpicky here, but this match was built on a lot of false finishes. There were a lot of really good false finishes. I didn't really bite for any of Jay White's kickouts, and I'll tell you why. He kept his eyes open. He looked at the referee. At one point, the match built to like the best pinfall in the match, the best near fall in the match, sorry. And Jay White was like there, pretending to be unconscious, but his eyes were open, and he was looking up at the referee, and it took me out of it. It really took me out of it. But all that aside, Jay White is, I guess, one of the most promising youngsters in the wrestling world today. He's 25 years old, I think. Terrifyingly, there are younger wrestlers about doing really good stuff at the age of like 19 or whatever, which is disgusting, and I find it horrible. But at the same time, Jay White's doing a really good job over in New Japan. He had a lot of critics at first. They're slowly being quelled, and this excellent match against David Finley will have managed to turn quite a lot of people onto his side. Welcome to the list, Jay White. I think it's his first week as well. A lot of newcomers this week. Everyone get inside, it's a party. Come on, get off the protein shakes, there's not enough to go around. Next up, at numbers 5 and 4, we're going to talk, this is new, I don't think I've included a tag team next to each other yet on Wrestlers of the Week, so I'm just going to do them in the same entry, but I will tell you who gets which amount of points. I'm not going to leave that up to you. I want to take control of this list. This is the Rascals, Desmond Xavier and Zachary Wentz, who had a great weekend over in PWG and won the PWG Tag Team Championship. The Rascals took part, I should point out also that the Rascals is spelled with a Z at the end, like all good tag teams are. The Rascals took part in a great three-way tag team match against the Young Bucks and the defending champions, the Chosen Bros, Jeff Cobb and Matt Riddle, and it was a really good match. The Rascals were the underdogs going into this. It was the Young Bucks' last match in that iconic PWG venue that they may well be selling on, and you know, that would have given a good reason for the Young Bucks to win. They even cut a promo after the match, putting over all the great matches that had taken place in the venue, what it had done for their careers, and all the great people who'd wrestled there, including some WWE superstars currently, and that would have been a reason for the Bucks to win. You know, the champions could have easily retained as well. They're a very strong tag team, two of the most over indie wrestlers in the world today, but no, PWG gave the titles to, I want to say, the least over of the three, but this is going to do wonders for them. I've actually seen the Rascals wrestle live, and I was very impressed with them. I've seen Desmond Xavier dance at an after party, and let me tell you right now, he is a wonderful dancer. I'm going to give Zachary Wentz 6 points, and I'm going to give Desmond Xavier 7 points for the simple reason that Desmond Xavier, I think, did the slightly higher spots in the match. He did Ricochet's thing. You know, Ricochet decides to just run across the ring and just dive out of the ring like Superman. He just dives head first and like goes over the turnbuckle, lands on the outside, and sometimes even lands on his feet. Desmond Xavier did that, so that's why I'm giving him 1 extra point. Not because I saw him dance and he was brilliant. I promise. It's partly to do with the dancing as well. Number 8, David Finley. I don't want to spend too much time talking about David Finley just because I've already talked about his match with Jay White in Jay White's section. David Finley for me was the more impressive person in this match, even though he lost because he didn't keep his eyes open when there were pinfalls going on. He also took a hell of a lot of punishment. Both guys did. Both he and Jay White took a lot of punishment. But at one stage, Jay White, right, I need to mention this spot, he put a table out on the outside of the ring, went to powerbomb David Finley through it. Of course, this being New Japan, the table didn't break, it didn't really budge an inch, and Finley just sort of went, oh no. But he lay on the table, and credit to him and credit to Jay White for trying again. Jay White went up to the apron, jumped off with an elbow, didn't really break again. Poor Finley, your back must have been sore this week, David. Oh, for those wondering as well, for those unfamiliar with David Finley, yes, he is the son of Finley. He loves to fight. Wrestles a more modern style than his father, though. I imagine he's tremendously disappointed. Look at you with your super kicks and your slapping of the leg and your fancy sit-out suplex. No, I'm sure he's very proud. Very proud indeed. Number 9, a man who I thought was actually higher on my league table than he was when I checked, when I updated it today. Volta, the big Austrian. I thought he was like in the top 5, I think, but he certainly wasn't. But he's getting towards there with a big 9 points this week. And there are, I think, 2 or 3 big reasons. What was the first one? The first one is, oh man, I can't believe I forgot it. He is the new PWG champion. He defeated Keith Lee in a fantastic main event on night 2 of their doubleheader, I think. And Volta looks set to lead. This title win, right, really cements Volta as not just a sort of cult wrestler that a lot of people enjoy, but not the whole indie scene is on board with. This cements him as one of the leading lights of the independent scene. He could probably go to WWE if he wanted to, but there's rumours that he was offered a contract alongside Keith Lee, but turned it down because he's happy with his life in Germany and wants to continue training WXW students and that sort of thing. Fair play to him, I respect that. At the same time, I'd never disagree with anything he did or said because he's terrifying. Also, over in Progress, I didn't know how much to take this into account given the fact that Progress, their shows were available on demand this week, but the matches themselves took place over WrestleMania weekend when I did their big 20 list. But I'll mention it anyway, even if it has little bearing on the points allocations, I guess. He's the new #1 contender for Travis Banks' Progress Championship, which is very exciting because Volta also holds a championship in Progress. He's the Atlas champion. The Atlas champions are basically big, large men, big, large, scary men. It's their big, large, scary division. It's the opposite of 205 Live. It's like 405 Live, 1005 Live. Volta and Travis Banks also have a match coming up in a little promotion you may have heard of called Defiant Wrestling, but I think the Progress one was booked first, so Defiant being a little bit cheeky there and sort of undercut. I don't want to suggest that. I'd never suggest that. I'm sure it's all fine. I'd never suggest that. 9 points to Volta, and now we move on to my Wrestler of the Week, and he is a man who I've wanted to include for so long and who hasn't even been anywhere on Wrestlers of the Week so far. He hasn't even picked up 1 point, but this week he picks up the full 10, or should I say the full Zero Miade. It's Pentagon. Pentagon is, let me put it this way, he is the most important wrestler in the wrestling world this week because he pulled off one of the most surprising title switches or world title switches that I can remember in recent years, I think, apart from when Jinder Mahal won the WWE Championship. And like Jinder, you look at Pentagon and you think, well, that's an odd belt for him to hold, the Impact World Championship. And I guess that's the whole point. No one was expecting this to happen, and when Pentagon actually won, it really took the pay-per-view off the air with a bang, and really, I guess, was the first step to Impact's redemption. I guess that's why they called the show Redemption. Now, for anyone familiar with Pentagon, it goes without saying that he's a really compelling wrestler to watch. He's not as flippy as some, he's not as hard-hitting as some, but he's a nice combination of all of those things, and at the same time, his presence is like no one else. I'll give a little newbie's guide to Pentagon. Basically, he's an evil but babyface luchador, wears face paint and a mask, really loves to break arms, loves to do death matches. I've seen a death match that he did live, or a hardcore match they did live, and it was pretty nasty. He's just got an impossible charisma about him. He says Cero Miedo a lot, which means zero fear, no fear, because he's really hard and that. And I just think he's brilliant. And the act hasn't worn stale either. You might think that it sounds like quite a one-dimensional thing, but it's not at all. He sort of updates it. Throughout Lucha Underground, for example, he went on a journey. First he was a heel, then he got turned babyface by the crowd like Austin, then he got corrupted even further and became Pentagon Dark, and he performed each of these things with like equal intensity and equal capability. So I really enjoy Pentagon, as well as the Impact title change as well. He also took part in that MLW match that I mentioned against his brother Phoenix. Yeah, they're brothers, that's right, if you didn't know that. Woo, they're brothers. And that's really important as well, being in the main event of the first televised show of a newer promotion. So fair play, Pentagon. I'm delighted to make you my Wrestler of the Week. So if we look at the league table, not much going on in the top portion of the table, I guess, because there were so many newcomers this week, but Volta climbs a few spots and is now firmly entrenched in the top 10. Also, I want to give a shout out to Drew Gulak, who, as I mentioned, is becoming almost the dark horse of this series, picking up little points here and there, feeding off of the scraps and scurrying up that little table like the rodent that he is, like the rodent you are, Drew, like the bloody rodent that you actually are. I really like him. What am I doing? I need to calm down. I think I need a break. Oh, maybe I'll go to the zoo. So that is it for this week. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. You can follow me on Twitter at JackTheJobber. You can follow me at Cultaholic. Shout out my little homie, Lil Zan, as well. You can check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic. And never forget, obviously, Ovos, to join us.